The cruelest laughter is the kind that stops the moment you open the door. I learned that on my wedding night, standing 6 feet from a ballroom filled with people who had already decided I was the joke. The Caldwell Grand smelled like white roses, expensive perfume, and champagne I could never pronounce correctly. Beyond the double doors, a string quartet played the same soft melody the wedding planner had rehearsed all week. Everything was perfect. The flowers, the candles, the gold lettering on the place cards. Even my dress, though 3 different seamstresses had warned me that ivory would be more flattering than white. Flattering. That word had followed me through every fitting like a polite little knife. I had spent my whole life hearing what would flatter me, slim me, hide me, soften me. No one ever asked what made me feel like myself. My name is Emma Brooks. I was 29 years old, 5 feet 6 inches tall, and large enough for strangers to believe my body was public property. That night, I wore white anyway. I had one hand on the ballroom door when I heard Helen Caldwell's voice from inside. Ryan's mother had a way of speaking softly while making sure everyone heard her. "At least the photographs will be memorable," she said. Someone laughed. A man asked what she meant. Helen lowered her voice, but not enough. "Ryan always did love a charity project. Our little fat joke bride will keep people talking for years." The laughter came quickly, light, effortless, like they had been waiting all evening for permission. My fingers tightened around the brass handle. The corset under my dress pressed against my ribs, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Then I heard Ryan, my fiancé, the man who had promised me, 2 hours earlier, that tonight was the beginning of the rest of our lives. "Mom," he said, just one word. Not angry, not offended, almost amused. Helen replied, "Oh, relax. Emma knows she isn't exactly your usual type." Another laugh. Then Ryan chuckled. It was small, barely more than air, but I heard it. That sound broke something inside me more cleanly than shouting ever could. I looked down at the diamond ring on my left hand. Ryan had chosen it because his mother said a larger stone would make my fingers look smaller. I had worn that ring for 11 months. I had defended him to my friends. I had ignored the way he corrected what I ordered at restaurants. I had convinced myself that silence was kindness and control was concern. Standing outside those doors, I finally understood the truth. Ryan didn't love me despite what his family saw. He loved having someone grateful enough to accept whatever he offered. I opened the doors. The music continued for 3 seconds before the violinist noticed me. Conversations faded one by one. Nearly 200 guests turned toward the woman they had been laughing about. Helen stood near the bar with a champagne flute in her hand, silver dress glittering beneath the chandeliers. Ryan was beside her, handsome in his black tuxedo, his smile disappearing as I walked closer. "Emma," he said carefully, "you're supposed to be upstairs." I replied. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Then I heard the entertainment. Helen's face went pale. Ryan stepped toward me. "Let's talk privately." "No," the word surprised both of us. I took off the ring. It slid free more easily than it ever had before. Ryan glanced around the room, already more worried about the audience than the woman standing in front of him. "Don't do this here." I reached for his champagne glass, dropped the ring inside, and watched it sink through the bubbles. A camera flashed somewhere behind me. Then another. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Emma, you're making a scene." "No," I said. "I'm ending one." Helen whispered my name like a warning. I looked at Ryan, really looked at him, and wondered how I had mistaken his approval for love. You should never laugh at the person who knows where your money came from. The silence that followed felt different. Heavier. Ryan's face changed. Not heartbreak. Fear. I didn't understand it then, but I remembered it. I turned before anyone could stop me and walked out of the ballroom. My heels clicked across the marble floor. Each step felt like a heartbeat returning to my body. I passed the main elevators, crowded with guests, and found the service corridor behind the kitchens. Stainless steel doors swung open and closed. Servers rushed past carrying trays. No one looked twice at the bride walking alone. At the end of the hall, a freight elevator waited with its doors open. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. A hand caught the door before it closed. A tall man in a black suit entered, breathing hard but standing perfectly straight. His dark hair was damp from the rain, and one cuff was marked with a thin line of red. He looked at my wedding dress, then at the number glowing above the panel. His eyes were gray, calm, watchful. The door slid shut. He reached past me and pressed the emergency stop. "Don't press the lobby," he said quietly. Footsteps approached outside. Several men were calling to one another in the corridor. The stranger looked at me as if the next choice belonged entirely to me. "Unless you want the people chasing me to find you too." The elevator stopped between floors with a soft mechanical shudder, and the silence inside became so complete that I could hear rainwater ticking from the stranger's coat onto the metal floor. Outside, the footsteps grew louder. Men called to one another in clipped voices, checking doors, moving closer. I stared at the thin red line on his cuff. "Are you hurt?" I asked. His gray eyes met mine. "Not enough to matter." "That is not an answer. It is the only one you need." He reached toward the control panel, then paused when the voices stopped directly outside the elevator doors. My heart climbed into my throat. 5 minutes earlier, the worst thing in my life had been a ballroom full of people laughing at me. Now I was trapped in a freight elevator with a bleeding stranger while someone searched for him on the other side. I should have screamed. I should have pressed every alarm button within reach. Instead, I looked at his sleeve again. The stain was spreading. "Take off your jacket," I whispered. One eyebrow lifted. "Why?" "Because black fabric hides more than white fabric, and your shirt is telling everyone exactly where to look." For the first time, something changed in his expression. Not a smile. More like surprise that I had noticed anything at all. He removed the jacket with careful movements. The white shirt beneath it was marked near his upper arm, but the injury looked contained. I pulled a small sewing kit from the emergency pouch beneath the elevator panel, then glanced down at the long strip of tulle trailing from the back of my dress. The veil had cost more than my first car. Helen had insisted on French lace because ordinary lace, according to her, photographed poorly. I tore away a narrow section. The sound felt louder than thunder. The stranger watched me wrap the fabric around his arm. "You just ruined your veil," he said. "The wedding ruined it first." His gaze lingered on my face, as if he were trying to decide whether I was brave or simply out of reasons to be afraid. The voices outside moved farther down the corridor. He waited another 10 seconds, released the emergency stop, and pressed a button marked B3. The elevator began descending. "There is no B3 on the hotel directory," I said. "There is now." "Who are you?" "Someone who needs you to stay quiet for the next 2 minutes. You stopped the elevator, brought me below a building that does not officially have this floor, and you expect silence." Most people choose silence when they are frightened. Most people were not just insulted in front of 200 wedding guests. That almost earned me a smile. Almost. The elevator opened into a narrow hallway lined with dark wood and soft amber lights. There were no room numbers, no signs. Only a black door at the far end and 2 men in tailored suits standing beside it. They straightened the moment they saw him. Their eyes moved to me, then to the torn veil around his arm. Neither asked a question. The stranger walked forward as if the building belonged to him. I followed because the elevator doors had already closed behind me, and standing alone in a secret basement wearing a wedding dress felt somehow worse. One of the guards opened the black door. The room beyond it was nothing like a hotel office. A wall of screens displayed maps of Chicago, security feeds, shipping records, bank transfers, and photographs of men whose names I did not recognize. Phones rang softly. People moved between desks with the quiet urgency of a place where every second carried weight. Conversations stopped when we entered. Not gradually. Instantly. The stranger removed his coat and handed it to a man near the door. "Lock down the west elevators," he said. His voice was still calm, but everyone obeyed before he finished speaking. "Find out who cleared the third-floor corridor and why." A woman at the nearest desk nodded and began typing. I looked at him differently then. In the elevator, he had seemed dangerous because people were chasing him. In that room, I understood they had been chasing him because he was important. A man with silver hair approached us. His eyes settled on me with open suspicion. "Vincent," he said. "Who is she?" So that was his name. Vincent looked at my ruined dress, the missing ring, and the strip of lace around his arm. "A complication." "I have a name," I said. The silver-haired man seemed offended that I had spoken. Vincent did not. "Emma Brooks," he said. My breath caught. "How do you know that?" He nodded toward one of the screens. My wedding announcement filled the corner display, complete with my photograph beside Ryan's. Under it was the Caldwell Family Company logo. The same logo appeared on 3 transfer records, 2 warehouse maps, and a red file marked active threat. I stepped closer. Numbers moved across the screen in columns I understood too well. Account codes, shell companies, repeated payments hidden beneath charitable donations. Ryan's company was tied to all of it. Vincent watched recognition spread across my face. "You know those records," he said. It was not a question. I looked from the screen to the man I had almost married, smiling from the announcement photograph as though he had never hidden anything from me. Then I turned to Vincent. "Why is my fiancé's company on your enemy list?" Vincent did not answer immediately. He looked at the screen, then at me, as if deciding whether the truth would be more dangerous than the lie. The silver-haired man stepped between us. "She should not be here," he said. "She has already seen too much." "I can't hear you," I replied. His eyes hardened. That was not an invitation to speak. Vincent turned his head slightly. The room went quiet again. "Grant Mercer," he said, introducing the man without taking his eyes off me. "My advisor." Grant did not offer his hand. I would not have taken it. "Ryan Caldwell's company has been moving money through accounts connected to people who want my organization weakened," Vincent continued. His tone was controlled, but the words landed heavily. "We have tracked the transfers for 6 months. Tonight, someone used the Caldwell grand to complete another exchange." I thought of Ryan's face when I mentioned his money, the fear that had replaced his embarrassment. "Ryan knew," I whispered. "That is what we are trying to determine." "No." He knew something. I stepped closer to the display. He did not look confused when I confronted him. He looked cornered. Grant gave a humorless laugh. "A frightened bride is now an expert in criminal finance." I turned toward him. "I am a forensic auditor." His expression changed by less than an inch, but I noticed. "I spent 7 years finding money that people worked very hard to hide." Ryan told his family I reviewed insurance claims because he thought my actual job sounded unpleasant at dinner parties. Vincent studied me with new attention. "Can you read these transfers?" "Some of them." "Then read them." Grant objected. "Vincent, this is a mistake." "Then remain close enough to witness it." Vincent motioned toward a workstation. The woman seated their rows immediately. I sat, gathering the heavy skirt of my wedding dress beneath the desk. My reflection stared back at me from the dark edge of the monitor. White lace, smudge mascara, no ring. I looked like the final page of someone else's fairy tale. Then the numbers filled the screen. I followed the dates first, then the account endings, then the decimal amounts. "These are not transfers," I said. Grant folded his arms. "The bank would disagree. The money is real, but the amounts are messages." Vincent moved behind me. "Explain." I pointed to 3 entries. $8,000 for $112. $6,118. $9,207. The last 4 digits are not cents disguised as noise. They are dates. April 12th, January 18th, February 7th. Dates of what? Meetings, deliveries, or locations? I do not know yet. I opened another file. The same numbers appeared beside warehouse invoices. My pulse quickened. And these letters are not account classifications. They are initials. Grant leaned closer. Initials belonging to whom? That is the wrong question. I pulled up the hotel event schedule. You should ask when the next one happens. The ballroom's wedding calendar appeared beside the transaction list. Ryan's company had sponsored 5 events over 3 months. Each event matched one coded payment. Tonight's transfer ended in 0917, September 17th. Today, another line ended in 2345, 11:45 at night. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 11:28. There is another exchange in 17 minutes. Vincent's posture changed. The entire room seemed to feel it. Where? I searched for the initials attached to the payment. W17. At first I assumed it meant a person. Then I remembered the hotel map displayed earlier. Warehouse 17, I said. Near the river. Someone across the room began typing quickly. A map appeared. Vincent issued instructions in a voice that never rose. Yet every person moved with immediate purpose. Phones were lifted. Doors opened. Information passed from one desk to another. Grant remained beside me, watching too closely. Convenient, he said. She arrives with Hale's enemies behind her, then discovers exactly what we need. I turned in the chair. You think I planned this? I think coincidence is a story people tell when they want to hide intention. Then you should be very interested in the fact that your name appears here. The room stopped. I had not meant to say it so soon, but the initials were clear. GM, repeated beside for coded payments. Grant's face did not move. That frightened me more than anger would have. Those initials could belong to anyone, he said. They could, I agreed. But the authorization signature belongs to someone with access to Vincent's internal accounts. Vincent came closer to the screen. Can you prove that? Not yet. How long? Give me the original ledger, not these copies. Grant stepped forward. Absolutely not. Vincent looked at him. Grant stopped. I understood something then. Vincent controlled the room, but Grant controlled what Vincent was allowed to see. That made him either indispensable or dangerous. Possibly both. Vincent lowered his voice. What do you want in return? I looked at Ryan's company logo, then at the coded records, then at the man whose hidden world had swallowed my wedding night whole. My freedom, I said, and the truth about the man I almost married. Vincent held my gaze. Find the betrayal in that ledger, Emma Brooks, and you will have both. The original ledger arrived at 1:12 in the morning inside a locked leather case, carried by a man who never looked directly at me. Grant entered the code. Vincent opened the case. I noticed both things. In their world, access mattered almost as much as loyalty, and Grant had just proven he possessed more of it than anyone else in the room. The ledger was not a book. It was a stack of encrypted drives, handwritten account sheets, event schedules, and photographs of receipts that had been folded, burned at the edges, or hidden beneath ordinary business records. Someone had designed the system to confuse people who expected money to behave like money. I did not. Money behaved like fear. It moved away from attention, returned to familiar places, and left small patterns whenever someone became careless. I worked until sunrise. Vincent remained nearby, saying little. Grant left twice and returned each time with a different reason for why I should be removed from the room. By 6:30, I had confirmed that the Caldwell Company was only one doorway into a much larger operation. Ryan had approved payments, signed documents, and introduced people, but he had not built the structure. He was too vain to hide his own footprints and too frightened to create something this disciplined. He had been useful, not powerful. That truth should have comforted me. It did not. Being betrayed by a coward still felt like betrayal. When I finally leaned back from the screen, Vincent placed a cup of coffee beside me. No cream. No sugar. Exactly how I drank it. I stared at the cup. How did you know? You passed the service station 3 times tonight, he said. Each time, you looked at the black coffee and ignored everything else. You noticed too much. So do you? Grant stood near the far wall. She cannot remain here. She will not, Vincent said. Not as herself. By noon, Emma Brooks had officially left the Caldwell Grand through a private exit and disappeared from every guest list, security record, and hotel report. By evening, I returned under a different role. Eleanor Price, temporary event consultant. The name came with identification, an apartment address, and a resume impressive enough to survive questions. Vincent explained that his organization owned hotels, restaurants, shipping companies, private clubs, and charities. The illegal parts existed behind the legal ones, hidden inside catering invoices, renovation budgets, and vendor contracts. Events connected all of them. Weddings, fundraisers, retirement dinners, auctions. People revealed more over champagne than they ever did under pressure. My new position placed me where secrets became careless. The first event was a charity luncheon at the Hale Conservatory 3 days later. I wore a navy dress, comfortable shoes, and no jewelry except a plain silver watch. No one recognized the abandoned bride from the photographs. They saw what people usually saw when they looked at me. A woman carrying a clipboard, standing slightly outside the center of the room, easy to overlook. I let them. Men discussed warehouse schedules while I adjusted place cards. Their wives compared travel plans while I corrected seating charts. A city inspector complained about a delayed permit to someone he believed was only a caterer. A banker handed an envelope to a contractor beside the dessert table. Every detail entered my memory. Names, times, repeated phrases. Who lowered their voice when Vincent approached? Who became louder? Who watched Grant before answering simple questions? I made no accusations. I built a map. By the end of the week, I knew which captain lied about fuel expenses, which hotel manager kept duplicate keys, and which charity director used the same private courier as Ryan. I also knew that the servers understood more than the men at the head table. I learned their names. Rosa had worked at the conservatory for 11 years. Marcus drove deliveries and remembered every license plate. Tasha managed coat check and could identify people by the perfume they left behind. No one had asked them questions before. Power had made Vincent visible to everyone and everyone invisible to him. That was his weakness. It became my advantage. One evening, I found him standing in the back of a banquet hall while I helped a dishwasher complete a college scholarship form between shifts. "You are supposed to be analyzing my organization," he said. "I am." By helping him apply to school, his supervisor uses temporary employees to sign false delivery receipts. He has copies. Vincent looked toward the young man, then back at me. "And he simply told you?" I asked his name before I asked what he knew. Something unreadable moved across Vincent's face. Respect, perhaps, or discomfort. Men like him understood loyalty as something purchased, inherited, or demanded. I was showing him that sometimes it began with being seen. The next morning, he gave me a chair in the operations room. Not at the wall. At the central table. Grant noticed. His smile stayed in place, but his hand tightened around his pen. I opened my notebook and placed a list between them. 12 names. 7 companies. For scheduled transfers. 1 repeated access code. "The person behind this is not Ryan Caldwell," I said. Vincent studied the page. "Who is it?" I looked across the table at Grant. He did not blink. "Someone who knows your house well enough to move through it without ever opening a locked door." The meeting began at 8 that night in a private dining room beneath the Hale Conservatory, where the walls were paneled in dark walnut and the windows looked out over Chicago like the city had been arranged for Vincent's approval. 12 men took their seats around the long table. Each wore a tailored suit. Each carried the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I stood near the sideboard with my notebook while Grant introduced me as an event consultant assisting with internal records. No one asked why an event consultant had been invited to a meeting about missing money. They did not need to. Their eyes moved over me, measured me, dismissed me, and returned to Vincent. I recognized that look. I had seen it at school, at work, at every dinner where someone assumed the largest woman in the room must also be the least important. For once, I was grateful for it. Vincent sat at the head of the table. Grant took the chair to his left. The chair to Vincent's right remained empty. I noticed that too. The first hour passed beneath layers of polished lies. Fuel costs had risen. Vendors had changed. A warehouse roof needed repairs. An insurance delay had frozen payments. Every explanation sounded reasonable until placed beside the others. That was the thing about deception. Each lie could stand alone. Only the pattern betrayed it. I wrote without speaking. One of the captains, Paul Carver, complained that his distribution route had lost nearly $200,000 in 3 months. Another man blamed temporary drivers. A third blamed accounting errors. Grant redirected every question with calm efficiency. He had done this before. He knew when to offer details and when to bury them beneath more details. Then Daniel Price, Vincent's security chief, placed a folder on the table. The access codes used in the warehouse transfers came from inside this room. The air changed. Chairs creaked. No one moved toward the door, but several men looked at it. Grant folded his hands. "That accusation requires proof." "We have proof," I said. Every face turned toward me. Grant smiled as though I had confirmed something embarrassing. "Miss Brooks, this is not a place for speculation." "Good," I replied. I did not bring any. I crossed the room and placed a sealed envelope in front of each man. Paul looked at Vincent before opening his. Vincent gave one slight nod. Paper whispered across the table. Expressions changed one by one. Confusion, recognition, anger held behind expensive manners. Inside each envelope was a record of money Grant had taken from that man's division, along with the date, account path, and false authorization used to disguise it. No 2 thefts looked the same. That had been the brilliance of the scheme. Grant had made every captain believe his losses came from a different problem, keeping them suspicious of one another while he moved money through the spaces between their distrust. Paul looked up first. "Where did you get this?" "From your own records," I said. "You were all looking at totals." I looked at timing. Every missing payment was approved within 40 minutes of a calendar change made by Grant's office. Grant leaned back. His face remained composed. A coincidence. I walked to the screen behind Vincent and displayed the audit trail. Then this is an impressive one. 43 calendar changes. 43 diverted payments. The same administrator credentials every time. One of the men at the far end narrowed his eyes. Those credentials are not grants. Correct. They belong to 3 assistants, 2 of whom no longer work here, and 1 who has been on medical leave for 6 weeks. I changed the screen, but every login came from the same device. A serial number appeared. Daniel looked toward Grant. Your office tablet. Silence settled over the room. Grant glanced at Vincent, then at me. You are allowing a woman who walked into our world 4 days ago to accuse me based on spreadsheets. The insult was dressed carefully, but I heard what sat beneath it. So did everyone else. I closed my notebook. You called me an event consultant because you believed no one would take me seriously. You left me in rooms where people spoke freely because you thought I was decoration. Grant's jaw tightened. And now you believe that makes you powerful? No, it makes you careless. Paul pushed his chair back. How much? I answered before Grant could. $1.8 million confirmed. Possibly more. Vincent had not moved since I began. His gaze rested on Grant, cold and unreadable. Then he looked at the empty chair beside him. He reached out and pulled it away from the table. The sound carried through the room. Sit, he said. I remained standing. Why? Because they need to hear what you know. Grant's expression shifted for the first time. Not fear. Something closer to disbelief. That chair had meaning. Everyone understood it except me, and I understood enough. I walked around the table and sat at Vincent's right hand. No one looked through me anymore. Vincent turned toward the captains. From this moment forward, Emma Brooks has full access to every financial record connected to this organization. You will answer her questions as if they came from me. Grant spoke quietly. You are making a mistake. Vincent did not raise his voice. Then you should hope she fails to prove it. I opened the next folder. I will not. 12 men waited for me to continue. For days earlier, a ballroom had laughed when I entered. That night, a room built on power went silent because I had finally taken my seat. Power changed the way people looked at me, but it also changed the way they watched me. For the next 5 days, I worked from the chair beside Vincent, tracing transfers, interviewing staff, and rebuilding the hidden structure Grant had spent years protecting. Doors opened before I reached them. Conversations stopped when I entered. Men who had once mistaken me for background now stood when I spoke. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt observed. At first, the signs were small. A driver appeared outside my apartment before I called for a ride. Daniel knew I had visited Rosa at the conservatory before I mentioned it. A private number called the office 10 minutes after I spoke with my bank. Then, one evening, I found a printed transcript on Vincent's desk. My name was at the top. Beneath it were the words I had spoken to my oldest friend, Claire, during a call that morning. Nothing dangerous. Nothing connected to Grant. I had told Claire that I was safe, that the wedding was over, and that I did not yet know what my life would look like when this ended. I read the page twice because my mind refused to accept what my eyes already understood. Vincent entered quietly behind me. You were not supposed to see that. I turned. That is your explanation? His gaze moved to the paper in my hand. Grant still has access to people outside this organization. Until we know how far his reach extends, every contact matters. Every contact. My voice stayed calm, which made the anger beneath it feel sharper. You listened to my call with Claire. My security team monitored it. That distinction does not make it better. He closed the door. Emma, someone used your fiancé, your wedding, and your identity to move information through my city. I cannot protect you while ignoring the people around you. You never asked me. You would have refused. Yes. The word landed between us. Vincent's jaw tightened. Then you understand why I did not ask. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man who had pulled out a chair for me with the man who believed my consent was optional when fear entered the room. Protection without permission is just another cage. His expression changed, but he did not answer. I placed the transcript on his desk. You told 12 men to treat my questions like yours. You gave me access to your organization, your accounts, your secrets. Yet you still decided I could not be trusted with my own life. That is not what this is. Then what is it? He looked toward the dark windows overlooking Chicago. It is me making sure you survive long enough to hate me for it. The honesty in his voice hurt more than denial would have. For one dangerous second, I understood him. Vincent had built his world around control because control had kept people alive. Every locked door, every guarded hallway, every monitored call came from the same belief. If he could see everything, he could prevent loss. But understanding a cage did not make it freedom. You do not get to decide what I trade for safety, I said. Not even if you believe you are saving me. He looked back at me. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the city below. What are you asking? I am not asking. I removed the access card from my pocket and set it beside the transcript. I am leaving. His shoulders went still. Grant is not finished. Neither am I. But I will not become one more person in your world who obeys because you are afraid. Emma, do not send anyone after me. That was the moment I expected his power to close around me. I expected Daniel at the door, a car waiting downstairs, an order spoken in that quiet voice no one ignored. Instead, Vincent stepped aside. The path to the door opened between us. If I let you walk out, he said, I may not be able to protect you. Then trust me to protect myself. He held my gaze for a long time. Go. One word. No threat. No command disguised as concern. I left the building alone. Rain had begun to fall over Chicago, soft and steady, turning the sidewalks silver beneath the streetlights. For the first time since my wedding night, no one followed me. Vincent kept his word. The freedom felt colder than I expected. At my apartment, I locked the door, removed my shoes, and stood in the darkness listening to the quiet. My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then a video appeared. Ryan sat in a plain room beneath a single ceiling light, pale and frightened, his hands visible on the table in front of him. Grant stepped into view behind him, calm as ever. Emma, he said to the camera, bring me the original ledger tomorrow night, or Ryan Caldwell disappears from every life that still remembers him. The video ended. A second message appeared beneath it. Caldwell Grant. Ballroom level. 11:45. I stared at the screen while rain tapped against the windows. Vincent had finally trusted me enough to let me go. Grant had just given me a reason to return. I did not call Vincent. That was the first decision I made. The second was to return to the place where everyone had mistaken humiliation for weakness. By 9:30, I was standing in my apartment with the wedding dress spread across my bed. The ivory fabric looked different now. Less like a promise. More like evidence. I found the torn edge where I had cut away part of the veil for Vincent and ran my fingers across the uneven seam. Then I opened the small sewing kit from my desk and began working. I had spent years learning how people hid money inside ordinary transactions. That night, I learned how to hide a data device inside a line of beadwork. The transmitter was no larger than a quarter. I stitched it beneath the waist seam, close enough to reach without drawing attention. A second device went inside the sleeve. That one would copy any unsecured system within 6 feet. I had built both from equipment Daniel had used during the audit. He once told me technology was most useful when no one noticed it was there. I wondered whether he would be angry or impressed that I had listened. At 10:45, I called a car and gave the driver the Caldwell Grant. The rain had stopped, but the city still shone beneath the streetlights. Storefronts reflected across wet pavement. Traffic moved slowly along Michigan Avenue. I watched my own face in the window. The woman looking back at me no longer seemed abandoned. She seemed unfinished. The hotel entrance was quieter than it had been on my wedding night. No cameras. No flowers. No string quartet. Only polished brass doors and a doorman who recognized me too late to hide it. His eyes dropped to the dress, then rose quickly. Miss Brooks, he said, the ballroom is closed tonight. I know. I walked past him before he could decide whether to stop me. Grant had chosen the same ballroom because he believed memory would make me easier to control. He did not understand that some places lose their power once you survive them. The elevators required a private access card after 11. I used the one I had copied before leaving Vincent's office. The light turned green. On the ballroom level, 2 guards stood outside the doors. Neither wore hotel uniforms. Invitation, one said. I lifted the skirt slightly and showed him the small silver card Grant had sent with the video. He checked it, then looked at my dress. Interesting choice. I thought Grant would appreciate the symbolism. He opened the door. Inside, the room had been transformed. The wedding tables were gone. In their place stood 6 narrow tables arranged in a horseshoe beneath the chandeliers. Men and women sat with tablets, sealed folders, and glasses of water. No music played. No one laughed. At the center, Grant stood beside a display screen showing shipping routes, bank access codes, and names I recognized from Vincent's organization. He was not merely selling information. He was selling trust, one stolen piece at a time. Ryan sat near the far wall with two men beside him. He looked smaller than I remembered. His tuxedo jacket was gone. His face was pale. When he saw me, relief crossed his features before shame replaced it. "Emma," he said. Grant smiled. "You came dressed for the occasion. You asked for the ledger. And you brought it." I lifted the small leather case in my hand. It held a decoy drive, 6 blank account sheets, and nothing that could damage Vincent. "Release Ryan first." Grant shook his head. "You are still negotiating like the world is fair." "No. I am negotiating like everyone in this room wants what you promised them." Several heads turned. "Good. Let them wonder." Grant's smile narrowed. "Place the case on the table." I walked forward slowly. The device in my sleeve began working. A faint vibration touched my wrist. One system found. Then another. The screen behind Grant flickered for half a second. No one noticed except me. I set the case down. "Open it," he said. "You first." "Meaning?" "Show them the proof that your information is real." The room shifted. Buyers glanced at one another. Grant had expected obedience, not delay. "You came here to save Ryan," he said. "Do not pretend you are in control." I looked toward the man I had almost married. He could not meet my eyes. I did not come because he deserves saving. Ryan flinched. "I came because I refuse to let you use another person as a leash." The device vibrated again. "Copy complete." I pressed my thumb against the beadwork at my waist, activating the transmitter. Every file moved into a secure cloud account I had created under a name no one in the room knew. Grant watched my hand. His gaze dropped to the seam. Too late. I realized he had noticed the missing bead. He stepped closer and reached toward the fabric, stopping just before touching it. "What did you bring into my room?" he asked. I did not answer. His expression changed. "Lock the doors." The heavy ballroom doors closed behind me with a deep metallic click. Around the room, tablets went dark one after another. The main screen flashed, then displayed a single message I had written an hour earlier. "You should never laugh at the person who is still listening." Grant looked at me. For the first time since I had met him, he was no longer calm. Grant recovered quickly, but not completely. His eyes moved from the message on the screen to the guests seated around the room, measuring how much control he had lost and how much he could still pretend to own. "A technical trick," he said. "Nothing more." No one answered him. That silence mattered. These people had come to purchase secrets because they believed information could protect them. Now their own devices had gone dark, and the woman they had dismissed as decoration was the only person in the room who understood why. Grant turned toward me. "Restore the system. Release Ryan." He gave a quiet laugh. "You still think he matters?" "He matters because you used him." I looked across the room. "And because everyone here needs to understand what happens when Grant Mercer decides a person is useful." A woman at the nearest table closed her folder. "What exactly did you take?" she asked. "Everything Grant offered you," I said. "Shipping records, account credentials, private agreements, names of people who trusted him, proof of every promise he made to both sides of the same deal." Grant's expression hardened. "You are bluffing." "Then open your tablet." He did. The screen remained black. Another guest tried his phone. Nothing. The transmitter sewn into my dress had not destroyed anything. It had simply blocked their access while copying the files to a secure server. No damage. No violence. Just silence where power had been. I pressed my thumb against the hidden device again. The ballroom screen changed. A countdown appeared. 2 minutes and 58 seconds. Grant looked up. "What is that?" "Insurance." I kept my voice steady, though my heartbeat was loud enough to fill the room. "Every file I copied will be sent automatically to the people named inside it unless I enter a private code every 3 minutes." Murmurs spread across the tables. Grant stepped closer. "You would expose everyone in this room." "No, you would." I pointed toward the screen. "You collected the information. You sold their trust. I only made sure the truth could no longer be locked inside your office." One of the buyers stood. "Is my organization named in those files?" "Yes." Another voice followed. "Mine?" "Yes." The questions came faster after that. I answered each one, not with details, only enough to confirm that Grant had played them against one another. His market had depended on secrecy. I had turned secrecy into evidence. The countdown reached 2 minutes. Grant looked toward the guards by the doors. "Take the device." Neither moved. Their loyalty had been purchased by certainty, and certainty was leaving the room 1 second at a time. "You heard me," Grant said. One guard glanced at the screen, then at me. What happens if the code is not entered? The files go everywhere they were never supposed to go. The guard stepped back. Grant's composure cracked. You think this makes you untouchable? No. It makes me unnecessary to control. The system does not need me once the timer ends. That was the part he had not expected. He had built his plan around leverage. Ryan was leverage. The ledger was leverage. I was supposed to be leverage. But leverage only worked when one person held the weight. I had spread it across the entire room. A deep mechanical sound came from the doors. They unlocked. Everyone turned. Vincent entered with Daniel beside him and 4 members of his security team behind them. He wore the same calm expression he had worn the night I met him in the elevator, but this time no one mistook calm for weakness. Grant lifted his chin. You came for her. Vincent looked at me first. Not at the screen. Not at Ryan. Me. I came because the hotel's security system reported an unauthorized lock on this floor. His gaze moved to the countdown. What do you need me to do? The room went still. He could have taken command. He could have ordered everyone out, surrounded Grant, or treated me like someone who had wandered into danger. Instead, he asked. I felt the meaning of that question settle between us. Choice. Respect. Permission. Nothing, I said. This is my table now. Vincent gave one slight nod and stepped aside. Grant stared at him. You are letting her decide the future of your organization? No, Vincent said. I am recognizing that she already has. The countdown reached 40 seconds. I looked around the room. Grant offered each of you protection in exchange for loyalty. What he actually sold was your fear. Leave now, and the files connected to you remain sealed. Stay and defend him, and the timer reaches 0. Chairs moved almost at once. Folders closed. People crossed the ballroom without looking at Grant. One by one, his buyers left. The guards followed. Ryan rose slowly from his chair and walked toward me, but I lifted one hand. Not yet. He stopped. Grant remained beneath the chandeliers, alone beside the screen that had once displayed his power. You cannot do this, he said. I already did. With 10 seconds remaining, I entered the code. The timer vanished. The files stayed sealed. Vincent looked at Grant. Your access is revoked. Your accounts are frozen. Your name will be removed from every company you used. Grant's face emptied. No shouting. No spectacle. Just the quiet collapse of influence. Daniel escorted him toward the doors. Grant looked back at me once, as if still trying to understand how the woman he considered invisible had become the only person in the room he could not predict. When the doors closed behind him, Ryan whispered, Emma, I am sorry. I looked at the man I had almost married and felt nothing holding me there. You are sorry because the room changed, I said. I changed before I ever walked back into it. Then I turned to Vincent. He did not reach for me. He did not tell me where to go. He simply waited. For the first time, the choice was entirely mine. The ballroom felt larger after everyone left. Empty chairs faced one another beneath the chandeliers, and the abandoned glasses on the tables caught the light like small, unfinished decisions. Ryan stood several feet away from me, pale and uncertain. Vincent remained near the doors, giving me the space he had once believed only he could control. I looked at Ryan first. You knew about the transfers, I said. He lowered his eyes. Not at the beginning. When did you know? A few months ago. His voice sounded smaller than it had in the ballroom on our wedding night. Grant told me the payments were part of a private investment network. He said my family would lose everything if I refused. So you signed. I thought I could fix it later. You thought someone else would pay for it later. He flinched, but I did not soften the truth. Ryan had not designed Grant's system, but he had protected it with silence. He had chosen comfort every time courage became expensive. Did you marry me because of my father's trust? I asked. His face answered before his mouth did. My father had left me a modest inheritance, protected until I turned 30. Ryan had spent months telling me money did not matter to him. He had even laughed when I suggested a financial agreement before the wedding. Now I understood why. Emma, I cared about you. That was not my question. He swallowed. The trust would have helped. The words should have broken my heart. Instead, they closed a door that had been standing open too long. You should go. Can we talk when this is over? It is over. Daniel escorted him from the ballroom without touching him. Ryan looked back once. I did not. Vincent waited until the doors closed. What happens now? He asked. I looked down at the dress I had worn twice. The first time, it had been chosen to make other people comfortable with my body. The second time, I had used it to carry the one thing they never expected me to possess: control. Now I finish what I started. Over the next 3 weeks, I dismantled Grant's financial network one account at a time. Legal businesses were separated from false ones. Employees who had been used without their knowledge were protected. Money taken from pension funds and charities was returned through audited settlements. Evidence connected to the Caldwell Company went to federal investigators through an attorney who did not know my real role. Helen called me 6 times. I answered once. She began with an apology and ended by asking whether I could keep the family name out of the news. "You are still worried about the photograph," I told her. "You should be worried about the people behind it." I ended the call before she could reply. The public story said the wedding had been canceled because of financial misconduct. It did not mention Vincent. It did not mention the ballroom meeting. It did not mention me beyond a short statement confirming that I had cooperated with investigators. I preferred it that way. Power did not always need a headline. Sometimes it needed silence owned by the right person. When the work was finished, Vincent asked me to meet him in the operations room, where I had first seen Ryan's company name on the screen. The chair to his right was empty. On the table sat a thick folder and a single brass key. "What is this?" I asked. "Everything my organization collected about you." I opened the folder. Bank records, employment history, addresses, photographs, transcripts. Every piece of my life Vincent had used to understand, predict, or protect me. "There are no copies," he said. Daniel confirmed it. "Why give it to me?" "Because I do not want your trust if I have to keep leverage to hold it." I closed the folder. The key remained between us. And that? An office on the 22nd floor. Separate staff. Separate accounts. Your own clients. No monitoring without your written permission. I looked at him. "You planned all of this before asking whether I wanted to stay." "I prepared an option. The decision is yours." That difference mattered. I let the silence stretch, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because I wanted to hear my own answer without anyone else's voice inside it. "I will not work for you," I said. Vincent nodded once. Disappointment crossed his face, quiet and honest. "Understood." I picked up the key. "I will work beside you." For months later, I sat at a long table overlooking Chicago while leaders from 6 organizations argued about territory, contracts, and old promises. A man from New York arrived late, glanced at me, and turned to Vincent. "Who is she?" Vincent did not answer immediately. He looked at me instead. The choice was mine again. I closed the file in front of me. "I am the person who knows which 3 companies you used to hide your debt, which partner you lied to, and why your accountant left Boston yesterday morning." The man's expression changed. Around the table, no one laughed. Vincent leaned back in his chair. "She is the reason everyone in this room still has something left to protect." I looked across the city, at the lights reflected in the glass, and remembered white roses, whispered insults, and a ring sinking through champagne. They had mistaken kindness for weakness. They had mistaken sighs for shame. They had mistaken silence for ignorance. Those were their first mistakes. Believing I would remain harmless after learning the truth was their last.